Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. If you're new, my name is Solomon Thomas. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I just got my master's in general psychology, and I have the goal of becoming a clinical psychologist and professor one day. So I'm making these YouTube videos for two reasons. One, I'm trying to practice articulating my thoughts and beliefs on various ideas that I come across. And two, I hope that these ideas I share might be useful for anyone out there who's listening. So in today's video, I'm going to try to discuss what's been called the frame problem from artificial intelligence, which overlaps with the problem of perception in cognitive science. I'm going to talk about cybernetics solutions to the frame problem, and with the limitations on my current video setup, I might end it there and have part 2 or 3 of what might be a series where I take solutions to the frame problem from the domain of cybernetics, ground them into biology, and then derive those implications and impose them on an understanding of personality. So, what is the frame problem? From my understanding, the frame problem has to deal with how we see the world, particularly when it comes to discerning what's relevant and what's irrelevant. So this problem was discovered, formulated in the middle of the 20th century by artificial intelligence researchers who were trying to develop autonomous robots who could understand the side effects of its potential behaviors in an environment. And as these researchers were trying to develop autonomous robots, they came upon the problem of all of the information that's in the world that could matter when it comes to acting or perceiving. So let's flush that out a little bit more. I have my microphone here. When I'm looking at the microphone as I'm engaging with it, some people could say that this is one object, and some might even say that this is one bit of information. So a bit of information, a binary set of outcomes, 0 or 1, and this could be one bit where the microphone exists or it doesn't exist, and the information that's predicated in my current visual perception here, it's predicated on whether or not I'm looking at it. So that's one way to look at how we look at the world. But there are other ways to construe the information that's in our environment. So this microphone isn't necessarily just one thing. It's actually an amalgamation of different parts. There are many objective facts about this system of objects that we have here. And when I use the word system, I mean that deliberately. I'm going to use the definition from Donald Meadows in a book called Thinking in Systems. And so a system is a set of elements that interact with each other, all oriented towards a given goal. So this system here has various elements, and each of those elements also has a set of objective facts about it. So this part of the microphone has a certain texture, it has a certain luminosity, a certain viscosity, it's at a certain temperature. We can talk about how each of the little microfibers, I suppose, for this part of the microphone also has a length and a width. And you can go on for seemingly an indefinite amount of time detailing out all of the objective facts about one or two or all of the components that make up this system. And when it comes to the frame problem, the question is essentially, well, how is it that an organism or a robot or an animal can come to approach an object and understand it and experience it as the gestalt, as a whole, as something that's meaningful in a somewhat simplified and comprehensive manner that enables us to get a grip on it? So when I use this microphone and I set up my station to film these videos, I'm not thinking about all of those different components that make up this system. It's just an object, at least that's how I perceive it. But again, going back to the frame problem, how is it that we can navigate our environment by essentially discarding so much information and ignoring a lot of it and only attending to that which is important. A lot of what I'm about to talk about comes from the work of Jordan Peterson and John Vervaeke and others such as Norbert Weiner, William Ross Ashby, Colin DeYoung, Jeffrey Gray. So majority of what I'm going to say here is not my own original work. This is my attempt to synthesize what I'm about to detail out. So I mentioned Jordan Peterson and John Vervaeke because John Vervaeke in particular is a cognitive philosopher. He has this theory called relevance realization that's essentially an attempt to formulate a solution to the frame problem from the perspective of cognitive science. And I like his theory and that formulation because the importance there is salience. It's what's relevant to us, and it's predicated on our value-oriented goals. From Dr. Vervaeke's perspective and from the perspective of others, we see the world in relation to our goals, and we organize our goals hierarchically in relation to what's valuable to us. So I had the intention of filming this YouTube video, so I needed this microphone. And so what I saw when I moved my microphone from my desk behind you guys, and I moved the microphone over here, I saw a singular object that afforded me the ability to make this YouTube video and to speak in a manner that will facilitate the ultimate goal of making the video. So I didn't see the temperature. I don't see the different little microfibers. I don't see all the little screws that I could pay attention to now if I wanted to. What I see is a tool that is meaningful to me in relation to my goals that are valuable in this moment and over a certain time span. That principle of relevance realization and salience dovetails with cybernetic solutions to the frame problem as well. So cybernetics is a discipline that tries to understand how dynamic systems within which living organisms are included. It seeks to understand how dynamic systems communicate and control and regulate themselves. It was founded by Norbert Weiner in the 1940s, I want to say, and part of what I'm trying to do in my endeavor to become a clinical psychologist is establish a foundational understanding of cybernetics on top of which other psychological theories will sit. So I think that the principles of cybernetics, some of which we'll get into as they are potentially solutions to the frame problem, those will be good to help understand how human beings behave and how animals behave. And that'll be a good basis upon which to lay things like psychoanalysis, CBT, and other kinds of personality theories. So that was a side tangent. But coming back to the cybernetic solutions, two of the potential solutions that cyberneticians have come up with to solve the frame problem are embodiment and reference values. Reference values relates to relevance realization, and we'll get into that in a second. But first, embodiment. We solve the frame problem in part because we have a body, and our body can be conceptualized as a physiological set of constraints that filters out much of the information in the world. So, for example, right now, because of the way that my eyes are, I can only see so much information in the world. I can't see at 190 degrees, which is essentially behind me. I can't see directly behind me. I can't see all the way up. I can't see all the way down. My visual system is set up to only take in so much information. So that's one way that we solve the frame problem, by having these physical constraints. We can only hear at certain decibels. I think that's the right way to say it. We can only feel at a certain resolution. We can only see at a certain resolution. We can only smell certain smells. So our body puts natural limits on the information that we encounter. One of the examples I like to use is, imagine a picture of a flower, make it a colorful flower in your mind. Now imagine that you're looking at it. Now imagine the perspective of a dog that's looking at that same flower. Then imagine a bee that's looking at that flower. And for those who don't know, dogs can see less colors compared to humans, and we actually see less or different colors from what bees see. So you get three different visual images of supposedly the same object. Well, then you can ask the question, which image is correct? And this ties up with the frame problem as well as with the problem of perception. The flower, just like the microphone, may be best conceptualized as a set of potential interpretations. It's a combination of information, of different kinds of information, from which we extract an interpretation that is useful to us and is also within the bounds of our physiology. So all three of those images from those three different animals are technically correct, and that implies that the flower has multiple interpretations. And I would then generalize that to the microphone as well as to other objects, where a part of how we see the world, how we perceive the world, and how we experience it is predicated on what we bring to the table. And a big part of what we bring to the table is our biology and our physiological differences from other animals and our physiological differences from each person. And that's going to relate to individual differences and personality when we get there. So that's embodiment. That's one of the ways that we go about solving the frame problem. A second solution, potentially, to the frame problem from the field of cybernetics deals with reference values. And reference values are simply goals. And so really, in this part of the conversation, we can just reinsert Dr. Vervaeke's work on relevance realization. A reference value in a cybernetic system is a set point around which a system tends to revolve. And when we're talking about reference values, we then have to bring up the concept of feedback loops, which is an important principle in cybernetic theory. When you think of a feedback loop, there are different components that it consists of that enables the system to behave. So the feedback loop has a reference value, it's a goal or a set point. It has inputs, it has outputs, and then it has a mechanism of comparing the reference value and the input. You have two different kinds of feedback loops, positive and negative feedback loops. And a lot of this I learned from William T. Powers, Charles Carver, and Michael Shire. A positive feedback loop works to increase the distance between the system's reference value and its inputs. So let's say that I set the goal of wanting to run away from a dog that's chasing me on my morning run. Those positive feedback loops that make up my nervous system will activate in such a manner so that it will produce outputs, which are behaviors or actions, that ensure that my inputs, sense data, information that I'm perceiving, moves far away from the reference value, which would say, be me near the dog. So those are positive feedback loops. You are trying to increase the distance between the goal and the current inputs that are being sensed. A negative feedback loop, which we will focus more on for this discussion, does the opposite. It aims to decrease the distance between your current inputs and your reference value. So if I wanted to adjust my microphone, what happens is that I will set that reference value where essentially the microphone is placed in the ideal spot. Let's say it's 2 inches to the right, or if I want to move it 2 inches to the left, I will imagine that world where that is true, and I will compare that set of information in my mind with my current inputs where I see that there's a deviation. So we have a mismatch. And to the degree that there's a mismatch and I'm embodying negative feedback loops, outputs will be produced so that way that ideal future potential, these scam likelies are blowing up my phone. I will produce outputs such that the distance between my current inputs, what I'm seeing right now, and my idealized future, my goal, my reference value, decreases. So, boom, now I'm good. Now the reference value matches the current inputs, so outputs can cease because the comparator is seeing that the goal has been accomplished. Okay, why am I saying all of that? We already talked about how our bodies, our embodiment, filters out a lot of the information, and so that's part of how we go about solving the frame problem. We further filter out information based on our reference values, based on our goals. So as I wanted to move the microphone, let's say I set the goal of wanting to move it 2 inches to the left again, what will happen is as I'm perceiving and acting in the world, the information that becomes salient and that I attend to the most is predicated on that goal. It's predicated on this desired future that I have modeled in my mind where the microphone is a little bit to the left. And I'm not paying attention to, the sensory data from my feet that are on the floor. I'm not paying attention to, some sound that's going on in the kitchen over there or anything like that. Your goals, your reference values, further filter the information in the environment so that way you can generate a coherent set of experiences that enable you to navigate the environment in an adaptive way. And so we're talking about something simple here where I just want to move the microphone, but this relates to just about everything that you do in life to the degree that this theory is something that's acceptable and valid. Another example that I've had for a while is imagine that you're in a classroom and you're trying to pay attention to the teacher. So you set the goal of paying attention to the teacher and making it through that class. Excuse me. Now imagine that you have to go to the bathroom. And imagine that you're holding it and there's 60 more minutes before the class ends. What will happen is that the reference value of needing to go to the bathroom will increase in its salience. So that goal will increase in salience compared to your original goal of listening to the teacher. And the more that there's a distance between this newer relevant goal and your current situation, that's how motivated you are. It's how much you have to go to the bathroom. The more motivated you are, the more that your attentional and perceptual and even emotional systems get gripped by this reference value. So again, going back to just the experience in the classroom, if you really had to go to the bathroom, it would be very difficult for you to pay attention to anything else. It would be hard for you to listen to the professor as they're speaking. And at some point, different solutions, different outputs start popping up in your mind, and you might even be forced to do them unconsciously, where maybe you start shaking to try to get some comfort, or maybe you actually raise your hand so you can ask to go to the bathroom, or maybe you just run out of the bathroom or run out of the classroom to go to the bathroom. We have these different reference values that have to be organized because we can't accomplish all of our goals and all of our actions at the same time. And so not only do our reference values filter out much of the already filtered information that's been constrained by the fact that we have a body, but those reference values also have to be organized into a hierarchy, and whatever's at the top of that value hierarchy determines in large part how you perceive the world. And that hierarchy of value is a frame of reference that protects you against all of the potential information and potential ways of interpreting the world that are actually there that exist. So you simplify the world to such a great degree so that way you can act in the world, but that doesn't mean that the simplified world that you're experiencing is the correct one or the true one. It's something like, it's a frame of reference that's good enough so that way you can make a decision and act and move forward to accomplish the various goals that you have. So I think I'm going to end the video here, and in the next video we're going to talk about, first we're going to do a recap, and then we'll go into how these principles of embodiment, of reference values, of feedback loops can be found in our neuropsychological dynamics. So thanks everyone for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.